just verses 4 through 7. It says, charity suffereth long and is kind, charity envieth not, charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. And we'll just open prayer. Dear Lord, again, I thank you for each student here, and I thank you for the time to gather together to have some fun, Lord, to sing and worship you, and then to open up your word and to see what your word has to say. And this morning, just open our hearts as we look at love. And I pray that you'll give me the words to say, that they'll be glorifying to you and honoring to you. And before we close, Lord, I do just pray that you'll be with the Sherborne family today, that you'll put your hand on Mr. Sherborne and help him to heal and to recover quickly, and be with the family at this time. In your name, amen. All right, so we're going to look at 1 Corinthians 13. We're only going to look actually today at verses 4 and 5. We're going to do 6 and 7 next week, but we're going to look at the definition of love, or what I would call the love test. How do you match up? This is what I want you to be thinking about. How do you match up when you look at what God's expectations are for love? And we live in a culture that really misunderstands that word. And we've looked at God's expectations way back at the beginning of the year, not that far ago, but far enough ago, maybe it started to fade a little bit in your mind. Jesus and Peter had an encounter. They're walking together, and Jesus says, "Do you agape me?" And you know, he was using the highest Greek word for love. And Peter couldn't answer him that. He kept saying, "No, I phileo you." So his love wasn't quite measuring up to what God's expectations were and what Jesus' expectations were. And ultimately what Jesus would do is he would say, and think of it this way, what Jesus was doing is he's looking at Peter, and in some ways he's looking at each of you, and he's saying, what's your relationship in the vertical? How much do you love me? And then he says to Peter, or to you, feed my lambs. See what he's doing? If you love me, you're going to love others. You're going to want to serve others, whatever it is you're called to do. And you may say, I'm not really that good at anything. I used to say that when I was in high school. I said that right up into my early 20s. I didn't think I was good at anything. Well, there's nothing I can really do. So you kind of justify it. You say, you know, what can I do? Well, God has a gift for each one of us. And what he wants us to do is serve. And when we do serve, whatever that gift is, there's three things that basically Jesus taught Peter. First of all, it was my sheep, Jesus speaking. It was his service. It wasn't Peter's. It's God's service. Second of all, it's a sacrifice. All right? It's not easy. If you're doing something God wants you to do, I guarantee that there are going to be obstacles. And there are going to be days that you're going to get up and you're not going to want to do it because something has happened and there's going to be resistance. And Jesus warned Peter that it was a sacrifice. And finally, it should be your focus. We were having staff people this morning, and I know you guys are a long ways away from this, but as you go into the working world and you are talking to an employer, one of the biggest things out there right now that came about, I was probably at work for 10 years before the concept of 401k and profit-sharing programs came about. I remember the day they called us in together and they said, we're going to start this 401k program that you can enroll in. And so I went to the meeting and I had no idea what they were talking about because I'd never heard of such a thing. Well, God has a 401k plan. God has a retirement plan. It's service. Your service gives you rewards in heaven. All right? So are you investing in the future? And those are the three things that it's all wrapped up in love. If you love God, you're going to gladly understand that it's his. You're going to understand that it's a sacrifice. And you're also going to want to focus on pleasing him for the future. All right? So that's the second thing we learned with Peter. Then we looked at, kind of what jokingly I call the Grinch syndrome. There's the world's love. 1 John 2:16 says, all that is in the world is the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the pride of life. This is a pseudo or a false love. And why it's false is because, if you notice each of these things, it is self-centered. And this is where the world today has gone wrong. Love is what makes you feel good. And I've heard people say that to me. You should be able to do whatever you want because it makes you feel good. That is right out of this. That is not love. That's not the love the Bible is talking about. Love isn't doing what makes you feel good. Love is doing what makes others feel good. And this is where we're going today. So the Corinth syndrome, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that, that's a false love. Everything he was doing at the beginning of that Dr. Seuss cartoon was all focused on what he wanted to make him feel good. And at the end, he transitioned and he wanted to do what was going to make everybody else feel good. All right? So that's the pseudo, that's the false world love. And the problem with that is, it turns our heart. It turns our heart from, if you want to think of it figuratively, from red to gray. Because we become cold. We don't really care about other people. All right, so then last week we looked at the first 4 verses of Corinthians, and Paul gave 4 examples to the Corinthians, and he said, listen, you can be the greatest orator there ever was. I can speak all the known languages, the languages of the angels, I can do all these things. I can be omniscient, I can know everything, I can be a philanthropist. In other words, I can just be so generous and give. And isn't that, by the way, isn't that love? That's doing stuff for other people. He said, I can have the faith to move mountains. But if I don't have love, it doesn't mean anything. Sadly, I've read articles about famous sports figures and actors who they'll be singing their praises because so-and-so has just given millions of dollars to a charity. And they get out and they become the spokesperson, they make a speech. But if you read down, and I'm not judging them all, but if you read enough, a lot of times, it's a show. They don't really have any care about whatever the charity is. It's a tax write-off. It's something that's going to help. Their manager has told them you need to do this to improve your image. And I've read these accounts, sadly, of certain people. And we can do it. Maybe, your mother asks you to go do something at your grandmother's house. And you don't really want to do it, but you do it kind of grudgingly. And so you go rake the leaves, and you're grumbling the whole time to do it, and your grandmother comes out and makes you some cookies or gives you $1 or whatever the case is, and she's very pleased with you, but inwardly you know that you weren't there on a good right mindset. That's not love. That's what Paul's saying. It's not the action, it's this. It's not what you're doing, it is what's in the heart. So now, you guys are I'm probably going to date myself. We'll see if I even have anybody that knows this. And this was pretty much out of style when I was young, but we still were aware of it. At least I remember being very, very young. Any of you ever heard of picking a flower and doing the he loves me not? Do you guys even still do that anymore? No. Well, I know you don't at your age, in high school. Well, I don't know, maybe you do. But that was I won't embarrass anybody. But I remember being with somebody, we'd have a group together, and they were always joking around. They were talking, I got a crush on so-and-so. He loves me, or she loves me, he loves me not. Well, this is kind of what we're doing here. It's a love test. All right? So what Paul is going to do is he's going to look at a series of things and saying, you love somebody, or you don't love somebody. And so let's take a look. So here's the outline. We're going to take a look at the definition or characteristics of love, and we're going to take a love test. Now, what I'm not going to do is ask any one of you to physically tell me how you did on the test. But what I am going to ask is you think very seriously about each of these terms we're going to look at and say, how do I measure up on that one? Am I doing that one, or am I not doing that one? Is it a positive or a negative? Should I be doing that one? It'll be clearer when we go through this. And then finally, we're going to do an evaluation. And we're going to take a look at any conclusions we can draw. I want you to think about this. One commentary said about love, about this chapter, notice that love is defined by verbs rather than adjectives. by what it does rather than what it is. Okay, love is something you should be able to determine by what you do. Now you can say, you just said what you do doesn't mean love. Well, I'm saying you can do something and not love. But the key is what's going on in here. All right? So when we look at these words, it'll become clear. So let's take a look. The definition or the characteristics of love, we're only going to look at verses 4 and 5 today, so we're not going to go very far. And it's the love test. Take a look at verse 4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. And we'll stop right there. I'm going to hope I can get some interaction today. We're going to do something a little different than a normal chapel. And this could be successful or not, depending upon how you respond. So let's take a look at the first one. Charity suffereth long. Somebody tell me, what do they think Paul is saying here? What does that mean?
That, like, when you do something, you shouldn't, like, just do it for, like, I don't know how to explain it, but he's saying you should go and help someone and do something and not just, like, do it for show, like, actually.
Well, that's the whole thing of love. But think, and this may help, and I should have said this before I started. Think about one thing. All the words that we're going to look at, all the actions that he's describing, has to do with my relationship with you and your relationship to me. God is not in the equation here, in the sense of, Paul is looking at how we treat each other, based upon how we love God. So Jesus said to Peter, do you love me? And then he said, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. So do you love me? Love the vertical, then love the horizontal. So this is a relationship. But think about the word, you kind of summarized the whole thing, and you did it correctly. But think about when he says, love suffereth long, what does that mean?
Patient.
Patient, go a little further.
Further.
Yeah, when you say patient, you're right, by the way.
Siblings.
Oh, that says it all, yeah. Okay, that says it all. Yeah, all right, so
Correct.
patience suffereth long. Here's what that means. Paul is saying love is long-suffering. What he's saying here is your sibling, if you have a sibling, or somebody in the class, or a teacher, or whoever, can do something to you, and you bear it. You don't lash out, you don't kick back, you keep a good attitude, you remain positive, you say, you know what? I don't know what's going on in that person's life. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they don't even get along with you very well. I've had some people and that we just seem to grade each other. And I could have gotten all bent out of shape. And I'll give you an example. This isn't a case where somebody didn't like me, but this is a case of somebody who didn't like anybody. I had a guy at work he was the head of our IT department, our computer department. And he was about as lack of social skills as they could come. And he would come in and, I heard your computer isn't working. I said, yeah, what's it doing? Well, I don't. So, and I would try to, hey, did you have a good weekend? I try to engage him. And he just would push back. He was very abrasive. Wasn't rude, but very short, wouldn't really engage. Well, I suffered long. Every time he came in, I didn't push him. I'd say, hey, Colin, good to see you today. Yeah, Colin, I'd send him an email. Hey, computer's working great, thank you. And when he left, we remained in contact. See, I was long-suffering. I could have said, you know what? The heck with Colin. I got more important things to do. I don't have time to waste with him. But it's like, okay, I don't know, I started thinking about it. He's a guy that works for 500 people that all day long people are complaining to him about how their computer works. Well, my computer is doing this. My computer is doing that. You fixed this yesterday and it's not working today. And so consequently, he got a bad attitude and he's like, I don't really want to talk to you. Long-suffering. Are you long-suffering? So here's your first test. Think about it. Are you long-suffering with others? Or do you run out of patience with them? So that's the first one. All right, let's take, Ephesians 4, 1b and verse 2, Paul says, walk with all lowliness, meekness, and long-suffering, forbearing one another in love. And forbearing means tolerating. Walk with meekness, lowliness, and long-suffering, tolerating each other in love. Because love is the only way you're going to really tolerate somebody. You've got to really love somebody to tolerate a column. It's, you know, I can't say the Debbie Downer, but I'm trying to think of a Donnie Downer. You know, somebody that's just always kind of on the negative. All right, let's take a look at the next one. This one should be pretty easy, but I still want an interaction on it. Love is kind, it says in verse 4. So somebody tells me, what do you think Paul means by that? You know what the word kind means.
Being nice.
Being nice, and what could you do to be nice?
Give someone food if they don't have any.
Yeah, sharing your lunch. Definitely, absolutely. Thinking about other people. I will give you an example this morning, and I was impressed. We stopped at Dunkin' Donuts this morning. My coffee's waiting for me. I'm going to have to heat it up because it's going to be cold. As we were walking in, I was being the gentleman, and I was letting my wife go first. A guy came out, and he was getting to the door at the same time as we were. He stopped. Did he open the door for you or just let you go first?
He opened the door.
I thought so. He was in front of us. And it looked like he was a contractor, and usually they're in a hurry. And he stopped, and he opened the door, and kind of nodded to my wife, and he let her go in. And he let me go in. Well, he could have been thinking, you know what? I got to get to work. I want to get my coffee. There's 2 more people in front of me. I'm going to, you know, he could have walked right in, and I wouldn't have thought anything. But that's kind. He was being kind. You don't see that a lot anymore. Coming to a store, and he opens the door, and he said, you know, he looked at Mrs. Hancock and said, go ahead. So love is kind. It's being gracious or gentle. It's looking at other people around you and saying, what can I do to make that person's day better?
Do your homework.
There you go, you hear from your teacher. Love is kind. Do your homework. Because that stresses the teachers out. And it makes their day
so much love to me.
Yeah, you want to show your teacher you love them, do your homework. That makes their day go so much better. And it'll make yours go better too. Ephesians 4:32 says, and be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. Now, if we had time, I would look at, there was the parable of the unforgiving servant. The servant had a debt from the king, and the servant was forgiven by the king. And then the servant went out and had a servant that owed him money. And does anybody know the parable? What happened? What did the servant do?
He yelled at him and asked him to pay right then.
Yeah, give me my money right now. That is not being kind, tender-hearted, forgiving, being gracious. So Paul is saying, be kind one to another, forgiving, tender-hearted, do your own work. You know, stuff like that. Give somebody your lunch. Open a door for somebody. Do the pay-through. I've had a couple of days, I remember driving to Brunswick, I wasn't in a great mood for something was going on that day at work, and it was going to be a really stressful day, and I was really tense about it. I remember this one day I was all uptight, because I used to order inventory for paint for 10 stores, and it could be stressful at times. And I knew I had a pile of paperwork, and I said, I'm going to get myself a coffee. And I drove through Dunkin' Donuts, and I got myself a coffee and a little breakfast wrap just to have something to eat. And I got up there, and the person said, you're all set. And I said, well, I haven't paid yet. And I said, no, the person in front of you did. And I looked up, and I got the hand wave. Wow, that changed my whole day. Just that. You say, well, it was probably $4 or $5. I know how much Dunkin' Donuts is. I understand that. But the thing is that it was totally unexpected. So be kind, be gentle, be gracious, be forgiving, be long-suffering. All right, next he says in verse 4, so charity suffereth long and is kind. Now he goes to what charity is not. Charity envieth not. Now this should be easy. Somebody tell me what he's saying. I'm going to add it because you're doing a great job. Let's see if I can get somebody else. Brennan.
Not being jealous of other people.
Yep. And give me an example of how you could be jealous towards somebody else.
They have something I don't, give me now.
Yep. Jealous.
Or they have an ability I don't have.
Yeah. All right. I am jealous of Pastor Giuliani, because when I was in, and I'm not really jealous, but I could be on this one. I took guitar lessons when I was in high school. And I tried to play guitar. And partially I gave up on it. I still have the guitar, by the way. I kept it. Although my daughter just took it, right? My daughter just got married and her husband likes guitars, and so I gave it to him. Well, I gave up on it for a couple of reasons. One, I got very short. I have a broad hand, broad span. I have very short fingers. I was pinching the chords. So in other words, some of the harder chords, if you've ever played a guitar, you really kind of have to arc your finger and get it up. And I got discouraged and I just gave up. So I could be jealous of Pastor Giuliani because he can play guitar and you can play guitar. So I could sit up there and say, I'm not going to get into this praise and worship because I don't think it's fair that they can play guitar. And I've always wanted to play guitar. All right? So sometimes we can do that. I've always wanted to go horseback riding. It's a bucket list. I'm determined before I die, I'm going to get on a horse and ride a horse. I just always wanted to do it. And I've had friends of mine who literally worked with horses. And there was a little envy and a little jealousy because it was like, first of all, I dropped hints. Boy, I've always wanted to ride a horse. This is actually a true story. And I was hoping for an invitation. Oh, why don't you come on out? You can ride a horse. Never got one. Well, I could have got all worked up and been jealous over it because they got to... So I'm just giving you kind of silly examples, but the thing is Paul says, if you love somebody, don't envy them. Don't envy somebody who does schoolwork better than you, who plays volleyball or basketball better than you. By the way, volleyball practice is next week. I forgot one. All right, moving right along. Oh, example is Joseph. What happened with Joseph that would involve envy? Again, you're doing great. I want to see if I can get...
He got a coat of colors and his brothers were jealous of him.
Yeah, all right. I come home with a new, I'm Italian, so I come home with a new, one of those new high-end Italian suits, and my brothers beat me up and sell me to the New York Yankees farm system, and I become a water boy for the New York Yankees. I know, that's pretty random. Well, the point is seriously, all right, Dad got Joseph a coat. Guys, get over it. Is it really that big a deal?
Yes.
But they got, yeah, apparently it was because they sold it. But that's an example of what envy can do to you. Love is not. If you're envying, if you're jealous, then that's a petal pulled off the flower. All right? Think of it that way. All right, next. Love vaunteth not itself. Now, I'm expecting this one to be hard because even the adults in devotions the last 2 days admitted that they struggled with this one. What does Paul mean when he says, charity vaunteth not itself? Does anybody know? Courtney, again, I'm trying to move around here.
It's not conceited, like full of itself.
Are you saying conceited?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give you, that's close enough. Love is not boastful. All right? It's not all about you. How many times I've got a guy that I used to go over, we used to love to watch John Wayne movies. And I worked with him at the lumberyard, and once or twice a year we'd get together and we'd put on an old John Wayne movie, and he'd have a bucket of, I really didn't like chicken, but I was being gracious and kind. And I was not criticizing what he was giving me, but every time I went over, it was IBC root beer and a big bucket of hot wings. And you can ask my wife, hot wings are on a scale of 1 to 10 about number 1.5 on my 10 list. I can eat chicken and it's fine, but it's not my favorite. I don't dislike it, it's just like, eh. So anyway, I go over there, and we got along really well. But all night long was stories about him. And hardly ever did he look at me and say, hey, how are you kids doing, or what's going on here? But that was just who he was. And he wasn't really boastful, but he just liked to talk about himself. But love isn't being self-focused, isn't being kind of boastful, so that you're always bragging about, I just got this, or I just got that. And you're trying to show off in front of your friends, and you're trying to make yourself look important. Love doesn't do that. Love is concerned about what other people do. All right? So love is not boastful. All right. And again, engaging yourself as we go along. This one should be easy. Let's see what I get for response. Love is not puffed up. And I'm going to go with Lucas in the back.
Trifle?
Yeah, trifle or arrogant. Kind of goes with, if somebody is boastful, somebody is probably going to be arrogant. They go hand in hand. If somebody likes to talk about themselves and brag about themselves, they're probably going to be struggle with being conceited and arrogant. So be careful of that. Be careful of how you relate in that fashion. All right, so here's where we are. This is verse 4. We have two positives, what love should be: patient and gracious or kind, long-suffering and kind, or patient and gracious. Love is not jealous, love is not boastful, love is not arrogant. Let's take a look at verse 5. Verse 5 says, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. All right, break them down one at a time. Does not behave itself unseemly. Might be easy. And again, I'm going to try really hard to move it. You're doing an awesome job. I want to try to draw in.
So they mean, like, don't try to, like, just show off to, like, get people to like you. You should, or do something nice just so people will like you. You should.
That is right, but that's more the last two that we're looking at. But again, you're right. But behave itself unseemly could include what you're talking about.
Doing weird things because you can.
Yeah, sort of.
I do that.
Sort of. Anybody?
Like manners, like, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, you're the closest so far. Manners.
Like not behaving in improper ways that are rude.
Yes. It's a combination of, think of manners and behaving. It's being rude. Love does not behave itself unseemly. You're not rude. Which, that's a pretty broad term, so I won't get into descriptions of what rude is, but you probably know. You probably know somebody you think is rude. And just think about, do you do things that are rude? Do you put people down? Do you make fun of people? Do you try to get the laugh at somebody else's expense? Do you do things that are really not proper, just to be funny? Love is not behave itself unseemly. Love is not rude. All right, love seeks not their own.
Me?
Oh, well, yeah, I hadn't picked you in a while, so.
Okay. It doesn't only think about self.
Yeah, give me, Brendan, give me an example of what that means. He's right, so love doesn't think about, so what would be an example of what may happen at school that would be somebody acting selfish?
I am going to open door. Okay, I slam it behind me. No one else comes in.
Yeah, it could be. Or it could be, and I gave this a real life example. The person doesn't go to the school now, and nobody out here will know who it is. But we had and I think I had told this story a couple weeks ago.
We do have people here, Alicia.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe, will they figure out from the story? Maybe.
Yeah, they will.
Okay, never mind, I won't say it. So in any case, just think about doing something, there's one of something left, and you're determined that you're going to.
What about getting in line for pizza? It seems like everybody rushes, me first.
Yeah, that's actually, the food scramble.
That makes sense.
You actually notice there's a couple reasons I never liked that when I was in school. You'll never see me fighting to get first in line. I just wait till it's all done, and I go through. So, and that's one I really don't struggle with as far as there might be some other things that I struggle with as far as there's all kinds of things we can do that are selfish. One I never struggle with is the line thing. It's like, all right, I'm really okay if I'm 10 minutes after the first person in line getting my pizza. I'm not going to worry about it. So you can go ahead from there. So, seeketh not her own is not selfish. Is not easily provoked. All right, you don't get irritable. So if somebody does something to you, you don't take it personally, you don't snap back at them. Kind of think of the first thing he said, that love is patient or long-suffering.
I think it means like, well, what it means is like it doesn't like like whenever, if someone says something mean to someone, they don't say it back?
Yeah. Yeah, and literally, what it can carry the meaning of, and I'm watching the clock, we're almost done, so I'm going to probably go through, there's only like one more. I'm going to try to wrap things up. But yeah, somebody says something bad to you, so you resist the urge to give it back. And that is so fun to do. So many times, I'll admit on this one, I can struggle with this one, because somebody says something, and it's like I've got 10 things that I can say right back at them, and boy, it's really hard not to say something. And so you kind of, you bite your tongue, and you go outside, you just let it go. Don't do that, because love doesn't do that. You do that, and again, you're removing a petal from the flower.
It's not just if they're doing something mean to you, they could be doing something totally innocent, but it just irritates you.
And that's true. Actually, it's a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
You just need to like, on your phone, if you're like doing something and like someone is just like did something like a while ago, it just comes back to your mind, you just kind of let it go and forget it.
Actually, she said something really important on the unforgiving part, but I want to go back to what Mrs. Ancona said, because I can get one tracked in some of these things. Irritable can be something that has nothing to do with you, and you just don't like it. It literally doesn't involve you. And I've seen this. I've seen it work. I've seen it here. It's a human nature thing. Somebody does something, and what they do just bugs you. Well, it had nothing to do with you, but you just get irritated about it, and you complain about it. Last one, and this is where we're going to close off. Thinketh no evil. Now, Delaney said something really important here. And thinketh no evil, what they meant, the Greek word that conveyed this, what it literally captures is the idea of keeping a ledger. It's, in other words, and I did this in devotions, and I'm going to do it, so I don't hurt anybody's feelings here. I'll do Mrs. Ancona. Mrs. Ancona did this morning, okay? And I'm going to write it down in my mind. I'm keeping a ledger, thinketh no evil. I'm going to write it down, and I'm not going to forget that one. I'm not going to let that go. I'm going to hang on to it. Now, I'll give you, this isn't exactly the same thing. I'll give you a real situation. I was at work, huge contracting company. They did millions with us. And I got a phone call one day, and the guy said, I want to add a couple items to my order. And I said, sure, what do you want? He said, a couple 25-foot tape measures. I said, no problem. So I put it down. They delivered it. I got a phone call back a month later, and actually he came in to get them. He said, I want to take the tape measures with me, add it to my order. Well, then he told my boss, he never told me that. And he had the tape measures removed from his account. It was about $70. They were big tape measures. I kept a ledger on that one. See what I'm saying? Because that really bothered me. And in my mind, I said, I was in my 20s, early 30s, I said, oh, I'm not going to forget that one. And I'm going to get that $70 back. And I can do it. That's thinketh no evil. See what I'm saying? Keeping a ledger. Somebody did something in volleyball. Somebody did something in basketball. Somebody did something in the lunchroom, out on the playground. Teacher said such and such. I'm keeping a ledger on that one. I'm not going to let it go. So as we close this off, and we're going to finish, the next time we meet, we're going to look at verses 6 and 7, here's where we're going this year. Love is your relationship to God. Jesus says, Peter, do you agape me? But love is also our relationship to each other. And we haven't got there yet, and we're going to this year, but you probably already know the biblical principle that talks about that. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what love is. And you can see where the world has gone wrong on that, because love is not what you can do for somebody else in the big picture in the world today. Love is all about me, myself, and I. So we need to think about that, and this is what we've built so far. We've got a lot of, if you're doing some of the things on the right-hand side, you're basically pulling, he loves me, she loves me not. Every time you're doing one of those things, you're removing a petal off the flower, if you will, of what love is supposed to be. Now, you may say, wow, there isn't a lot on the other side. The next 2 weeks, you're going to see that list on the other side is going to grow. And we're going to see, well, all we've got so far is patient and gracious. And interestingly, if you're patient and kind, it really is going to take care of almost everything on the other side. If you're patient and you're kind, you're not going to be jealous. You're not going to be boastful. You're not going to be arrogant, rude, selfish, irritable, unforgiving. But now we're going to start to see more of what love is beyond just being patient and gracious. So next week we'll finish it off. So just think about that today as you're going through your day today. Something is going to happen. By the way, even for adults, this morning we had this for devotion. I had 2 adults say to me, wow, I wish I'd known that this morning because such and such happened first thing this morning, kind of thing. It happens to all of us. It's not just you. So think about that as the day goes on, something happens that maybe falls into one of these categories. How you respond to that situation shows how much your love is.